Hello, Brian Beatty here, San Francisco State, and I'm going to take you through one of my courses and show you the engagement approach I use in many of my HyFlex courses. This is a typical kind of a seminar course, anywhere from 15 to 25 students. It's in a grad program, but it could be easily done by undergrad students as well. There's nothing magic about the grad level for a course like this. And so I'm going to talk through the various things that I've been proposing that we do as far as engaging our students, especially within modes and across modes, and perhaps across modes most importantly, since that seems to be often one of the more challenging ones for us. And so I'm going to share uh, my course here. This is a course that I completed recently. It's not active anymore. And it just looks like a regular course. We use the Canvas system. You're seeing the instructor view. Students don't see all the things that you see with no eyes on them here, and they see a little less controls as well. But basically, I design it and build it as an asynchronous online course, and I use it for synchronous online instruction as well, and also in the classroom. When I have classroom students, you have synchronous students at the same time, kind of obvious. And then the asynchronous students are doing, in the same week, they're doing the same content and the same activities, and yet they're doing it at their own time. So one of the things that I want to talk about are the use of discussions. And the discussions are one way that I like to rely on activity in here for students to interact with each other, interact with me, and maybe engage with the content in a way they're actually applying it. And one of the things I do that I have that's the same for all students is this reflections forum post. And this reflections post, which I probably mentioned in the other module materials for this workshop, asks them to reflect on their learning. This is a discussion that we are not having in the synchronous session. We are not having this in the online topic-oriented discussion for the week. We are doing this as an extra thing for everyone. And one of the reasons why I give them a little less time in the live class is so they can do things like this and not feel overburdened by all these extra requirements that Dr. Beatty's making them do. I want them to tell me how their learning is going from a process perspective. Is it satisfying? Is it frustrating? Are they confused? Are they finding this valuable and worthwhile? Those are the kinds of things I'm looking for, more of the maybe the affective kind of element for their experience. And this is an open forum. Every student is supposed to post to their own thread every week. And so out of here, let's say I had 15 students, and there's usually 14 or 15 weeks of our semester. That means we should have 15 times 15 posts here, which is roughly 225, I believe. You can see I only have 140. So there's some students who aren't doing all of their posts, at least didn't in this class. Actually, I don't think I had 15 students in here. Maybe I did. Don't remember. Um, but then they reply to it, and everybody else can see everyone else's post as well. They don't have to look at everyone else's posts, but they can. They don't have to reply to anyone, but they can. I tell them I read everything. I'm the only one required to read everything. And some of these may have posted late, which might be why they didn't get read at the very end, the last 2 or 3 days. But I also tell them that I don't reply to most posts. I only reply when they're asking me a direct question or they're saying something I feel like I have to interact with and doing it publicly in the forum. So that's the first way I do this kind of engagement. Another thing I do is also in discussions, and this is every week, we have a topical discussion. Let's say here's an example of one. And in this post, they're supposed to be applying what we're talking about in their context or a context that they create or play with, as an academic environment for them to do this if they don't have an actual context to apply this to. Most of them do have an actual application context. So this is a discussion that's different than the classroom discussion. The classroom discussion is more focused on the topic at hand. We kind of review some of the highlights from the readings. We kind of are testing out to see if we've got the basic understanding. And then after that session, the live session, which is typically no more than 20 or 120 minutes in a week, they have another 45 minutes to 60 minutes of time, interaction time that week with me. And we do this in the online discussion. Everybody does this the same. Students are able to do this right after the live session. If they have that block of time, 2 hours, 45 minutes, or 3 hours, and they want to use that other chunk of time to do this, they can do that. Most of them don't. They'll wait. They'll do it the next day or the day after, etc. The way I set up these discussions is so that they will participate sooner rather than later. There is an expectation that within the first 2 or 3 days after the live session, they're doing one post for a point, and then they do three more posts within the next 3 or 4 days by the end of the academic week. So in a week, they're doing four posts at least. They've got their own kind of original post or starting post, which I say can be a reply to someone else as long as it's substantially got some new stuff in there. And then three replies to the ideas of other. It's a two-stage grading process. If they don't do the first post right away, they don't receive a full point for that. So they might receive a quarter of a point. And then the other three, they get all points for the other three, no matter how late they are, as long as they're done by the due date, and they're substantial posts. They're not just, hey, that was great. That doesn't really count. They know that, or they learn that pretty quickly. The reflection forum is 10% of their overall grade, just that one forum. All of these forums together for the topical discussions, that's another 10%. So that's 20% of the grade, which is basically active participation in the forums, which are strong forms of engagement for a class like this. Okay, so what's another way we do this? Well, another thing we do is we do breakouts in almost every class, not every class, but most classes. And so when we do a breakout, let me just go into this one. When we do breakouts, we fill out we fill out notes while we're doing our breakout, and we do these notes as a group. So, for example, for session 3. If I go to this element, these are some of the notes that were taken during that live document. So this is a shared Google Doc. At the end of the semester, at the end of the course, I don't know, there's like 50 pages or so of notes here that students can take with them if they want to. This class talks a lot about new technologies or emerging technologies or technologies done differently. So there are a lot of technologies people bring up in class. And so for this one, it's full of links, as you might see. And so this is just asking them to explore some of the sites, and to talk about what looks like that's new to them, especially around getting students access to content. And so this was all just the brief post there. And then the different groups put their notes in there. And then we do a debrief after roughly 20 minutes, maybe 25 minutes of exploration. The students who are asynchronous learners, they add their own comments. They do the same activity and add their own comments afterwards. And I checked to see whether or not they've done this. For students who are working asynchronously, for them to get credit for being here this week, they have to do two things. They have to watch the recording or at least access the recording, and they can get the transcript if they want. They don't actually have to watch the recording, the whole thing if they don't want to. Some do, some don't. And they also have to put participating in the breakout room shared notes. And if we do like another polling activity, like a Mentimeter activity, that's another thing that they would be part of. Some classes I do a lot of the polling with the external tool. Some classes I don't do very much polling with the external tool. It kind of depends upon the nature of the course and kind of the overall design. But when we do that, when we do that polling, then we do the live session has the poll. I'm just checking to see if I don't remember offhand if we have one. Here's an example one. And so in a situation like this, the activity tool is set up so that in the live session, it's paced by me. In the asynchronous session, the students are the ones who get to click through at their own pace, and then they participate. So asynchronous students get to answer the same polling questions that we did in the class. And then their results are part of the overall results for that class session. This is session 4. So these Mentimeter results for session 4 include the results from asynchronous students. And so I could go through all of these. And what I'll do is I usually review these before the next class, and then often we'll make oops, I'm using the wrong number here, or the wrong thing here. We talk about them briefly in the class. And so especially when there's an open-ended question, where they're adding comments or we're sorting things, when students are doing free responses, the asynchronous students, I ask them to put their name on it so I know it's them, and you'll see some of that. And then for the asynchronous students, I ask them to put their names, like usually on the last slide, basically leaving the trail for me to follow to know that they were here and that they did what they were asked to. So that's another form of engagement. We're doing a polling activity in the synchronous session, which would include, of course, the classroom students. And then the asynchronous students do the same activity, and then they add their comments essentially to what we were talking about in the poll, and then they leave a trail. That's right. Okay, so another thing we do, and this is the last one I'll talk about. I do encourage them to try out these are different modes. And in part so they can, sometimes they'll see that, hey, there's 6 people in this class that I never see in the synchronous session. Where are they? They're in the asynchronous. They see them in the forums, but they might also want to choose to be part of the asynchronous at some point. And I encourage them to try that out, so it's not a shock if they're kind of forced into it and hadn't planned on it. In the assignments, now I'm using the left-hand navigation because that's what I typically like to do, but it's all embedded into the modules as well. In the assignments, they can actually see we do peer review. And so this assignment, let me get out of the discussions. Let's do tech demos. Normally this is split apart differently. It's after the semester, and I think maybe it got reorganized somehow. But anyway, what I do is I require them to do peer reviews for 3 colleagues after they've turned in a paper. So what we do in this class is we do papers and presentations. So that, for a big chunk of content, they write up a 2 or 3 page summary of how they would use this in practice, and then they demonstrate that technology being used to help someone learn something in 10 minutes, 8 to 10 minute presentation. If you're in the synchronous session, you're encouraged to do a live presentation with us, usually through Zoom or in person in the classroom. If they're asynchronous learners, they post a recording and then people give them feedback on the recording. But after they post their paper, if they turn in their paper on time, by the time the draft is due, which is at the due date, essentially, then they get assigned 3 peer reviews that midnight. And those peer reviews are designed to give them the opportunity to read 3 other papers and provide feedback through the Canvas speed grader tool to their colleagues. Okay. And so normally it shows that here, but I can't edit it or actually see the peer review process here because the course is done and it says you can't change anything, so it won't let me see that. But if I turn my paper in on time, then I get 3 people I'm assigned to give peer review. I can't see the drafts of anyone else. I can ask other students to see their draft and offer to give them peer review, maybe exchange peer review, but I don't try to manage that at all. There was a time before I had a reasonably robust tool like this where I would just suggest that, hey, maybe you could ask few of your colleagues to give you this, to give you peer review, and you can give peer review back to them. But I wasn't managing it. It's just too complicated sometimes. And so this makes it a lot easier to do that. In the rubric I have for this assignment, which I believe is here, sure enough, there's an element in here, 1/10, basically 10% of their grade is doing peer feedback. So they do peer feedback. It's reasonable peer feedback. And if they don't turn the draft in on time, they can't do the peer feedback unless they make a special pitch to me to kind of give them some peer ones to review, which some do, some don't. And they kind of lose their 10% if they don't. So it's enough of a motivator to get them to turn in a draft on time. So that's another way that I have them engaging with each other because they learn then now, and that's a random assignment. And so they're not getting the same people to review each time. They're not getting comments from the same person each time. Works out pretty well. Those are the major elements of engagement that I use, that kind of cross the different modes. I mean, clearly in the synchronous session, it typically is an engaging, interactive discussion kind of environment, but that would be like a normal classroom teaching assignment. If you have more questions about this, don't hesitate to put them into the forum, or if you have specific questions for me, you can always, of course, email me or get me through the Canvas messaging system as part of the workshop. Thanks for listening.